Hey guys, Steven here, the Boiler Master, back by popular demand. So in my last video, I mentioned some more aggressive growth projections for revenue. Sounds like everybody wants to see them. The guys asked for conservative projection and a really aggressive growth projection to compare the two. So let's take a look at a few of the numbers. Looking at the year over year, that model's just not really going to work. Having such a large acquisition like QXTel just this year's exploding. There's no real way to project that and be accurate at all. So, looking more detailed into it, how we can break it down with these acquisitions happening mid-year, get into our quarterly revenue chart. You can see I've thrown the percents in here, what the quarter over quarter growth has been. 3-year average is 11.38%. Now, that's the long-term 3-year average. We know growth's been accelerating lately, and we know that so far January's already done 17 million, breaking records. So, looking more recent, we know Q1, if January repeats, is going to be 51 million. That's going to put them at 19.2% for Q1. So looking at the last 4 quarters, we'd be looking at 20.3% average growth. So on the very, very low end, 11.38. On the very, very high end, 20.3%. I'm going to go ahead and go with a conservative estimate, just saying that they're going to continue a 12% growth each quarter. On the more aggressive side, we'll say a 20% growth each quarter. Now, of course, we have to account for QXTel acquisition. So, how much are they actually going to contribute in Q1? I don't know. We're just going to keep it simple and say they add 10 million in Q1. So Q1 does 61 million. Now, Q2, we've got to add 12% to that, but they're going to be cross-selling and growing with the entire 20 million a quarter QXTel ads. So throw another 10 million on top of Q1 and add 12% to that, we get $80 million for Q2. Now QXTel's full 20 million per quarter is built in, and we can just continue the 12% trend. That puts 2024 at 329 million, 2025 at 534 million. Now let that sink in. This is the conservative estimate using only 12% quarter over quarter growth. No additional acquisitions. 534 million next year. But it's not a billion yet, so let's continue. Continuing it out for another year, this puts 2026 at 840 million with Q4 just shy of $250 million revenue. So naturally, IQST becomes a $1 billion company in 2027. That's the conservative estimate. Now, there are some flaws with this model, and growth could slow down when we're talking about a few years out. And honestly, there's a dozen ways we could project the future revenue and get different results. But I think this one's fair. Just build in a margin of error, maybe 10 or 20%. But reality is the stock is currently valued at only a $45 million market cap. So we could be half wrong and still be in good shape. So that's a way to look at a conservative model. We're talking $500 million next year and a $1 billion company by 2027. But if we want to look at the more aggressive model, which is what you guys are really wanting to see, we're going to be talking about more like a 20% average quarter over quarter growth. Now, I'm going to tell you, I do not think this will happen. It's just not sustainable to maintain that level of growth for several years out, but we'll do it for fun. So let's go back to Q1. That stays the same at 61 million, and then we build in the other 10 from QXTel because they're going to be contributing 20 million a quarter, and then we add 20% growth to that, and Q2 comes in at 85 million. Q3, add 20% growth to that, we're talking 102 million. But we have to stop there and consider that IQST is working on a second acquisition they hope to close the first half of this year. So how much do we add? Well, the conservative model didn't add anything, but the aggressive model, adding another $80 million like QXTel did, just seems a little too crazy. So why don't we meet in the middle, call it around 40 million. So acquire a new subsidiary doing around 40 a year, and that'd be another 10 million per quarter, putting Q3 at 112 million instead of 102. From there, just add another 20% growth each quarter, and 2024 comes out to be 393 million, 2025 868 million, and 2026 would be $1.8 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. Now, like I said, I wouldn't predict such an aggressive growth. Growth tends to slow down as you get bigger. Right now, IQST is accelerating, but once they reach half a billion, it's just not going to be sustainable unless they pull off major acquisitions every single year. So I don't want to say it's not possible. They could sustain that level of growth for a couple more years, but I'd say it's unrealistic. I wouldn't personally bet on it. So, what is realistic? Well, the truth is this is nothing more than an educated guess. We can predict this year somewhat okay and a rough estimate for an idea for next year, but anything further out, we just don't know. So, mildly conservative for 2024 is 329 million. Mildly aggressive is 393 million. But for 2025, mildly conservative is 534 million, and the aggressive model is 868 million. Beyond that, 2026, 2027, I would just say we're a billion-dollar company, somewhere around there, and leave it at that. As for valuations for the share price, just looking at the end of next year, on the conservative model, 2025 doing 534 million revenue at a price to sales ratio of just 1.5, and call it maybe 200 million shares by then, and we'd be talking a $4 share price at the end of 2025 as fair value. That would be on the low end and being conservative, over $4. Now, aggressive valuation, 2025 doing 868 million at, say, a 3.0 price to sales ratio with the same 200 million shares by then, and we're talking just over $13 share price. So somewhere between $4 and $13. Now, that is a wide range, but again, what if we're half wrong? It's still over 10x the current share price. So, I mean, personally, if things go as I expect they will, I'd say we do somewhere over 300 million this year, over 500 million next year, or at least close to it. And fair value lands somewhere around $5 to $7. Doing more wouldn't surprise me at all, but I wouldn't bet on it. So that's where I feel confident. Over 300 this year, around or over 500 next year. And by the time we're entering 2026, they've already uplisted it to the Nasdaq. The stock's gone over $5, and it sounds crazy for a 26-cent stock, but we all know it's worth more than that right now. So really, it's undervalued. We're talking about fair value, and I believe the fair value is going to increase. You know, it's 26 cents, but that's irrelevant. We know it's worth more than that right now. So we just need to see fair value. And with this acquisition 2024, the growth is going to gain some attention. Right now, it's not official. It's just PRs. We're hoping they do this, but you get that revenue on the balance sheet and show audited financials with over 300 million revenue, over 100% year-over-year growth, and it won't go unnoticed. And if they continue, by 2030, we're talking about a share price in the tens of dollars. So I like where things are going. I don't think we're going to be on the very aggressive side, hitting $1 billion in 2026, but I do think that we're going to be there probably by 2027, and I don't know how to project anything out beyond that. But you guys wanted to see the conservative and the aggressive side of things, and there it is. We're talking $500 million in 2025 on the low end, and on the high end, we're talking damn near $1 billion. So you guys saw my numbers. I want to hear what you think. What's your estimate for this year or 2025? What year do you think they'll do $1 billion? Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take any of this as financial advice. I was just putting it together for fun because you guys asked to see it. So personally, I'm going to stick with my conservative charts, and I'm going to say you guys do your own DD and don't do any investing off of anything that I say. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope it was fun.